guys. Together we're back to Winn Dixie. Because of Winn Dixie, we're going to go to chapter 5. On chapter 5, I wonder what's going to happen next. You know, Opal just learned a lot about her mom. 10 things about her mom that she had never known before. Because her mom wasn't really around anymore. She left. Well, she's hanging out with Winn Dixie, that's for sure. Winn Dixie couldn't stand being left alone. We found that out real quick about that dog. If me and the preacher went off and left him by himself in the trailer, he pulled all the cushions off the couch and all the toilet paper off the roll. So we started tying him up outside with a rope when we left. That didn't work either. Winn Dixie howled until Samuel McDwetler's dog started howling too. It exactly was the kind of noise that people in the adult trailer park did not like to hear. He just doesn't want to be left alone, I told the preacher. That's all. Let's take him with us. I could understand the way Winn Dixie felt. Getting left behind probably made his heart feel empty. After a while, the preacher gave in. And everywhere we went, we took Winn Dixie, even to church. The Open Arms Baptist Church of Naomi isn't a regular-looking church. The building used to be a Pick It Quick store. When you walk in the front door, the first thing you see is the Pick It Quick motto. It's written on the floor in little red tiles that make big letters that say, pick, 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 quick, quick, quick. The preacher tried painting over these tiles, but the letters won't stay covered up, and so the preacher just gave up and let them be. The other thing about the Open Arms Church is that it's different from other churches. It's that there aren't any pews. People bring in their own folded up chairs and lawn chairs, and so sometimes it more looks like a congregation is waiting for a parade, or we're sitting at a barbecue instead of a church. It's kind of a strange church. I thought Winn Dixie would fit right in. But the first time we brought Winn Dixie to the Open Arms, the preacher tied him up outside the front door. Why do we bring him all this way here just to tie him up? I asked the preacher. Because dogs don't belong in church, Opal. That's why. He tied Winn Dixie up to a tree and said how there were lots of shade for him and that it ought to work out real good. Well, it didn't. The service started, and there was some singing, and some sharing, and some praying, and then the preacher started preaching. And he wasn't but 2 or 3 words into the sermon when there was a terrible howl coming from outside. The preacher tried to ignore it. Today, please, friends, everyone turned in their lawn chairs and folded up chairs and looked at each other. Opal! Yes, sir? Go get that dog! Yes, sir! I went outside and untied Winn Dixie and brought him inside. And he sat down beside me and smiled up at the preacher, and the preacher just couldn't help it. He smiled right back at Winn Dixie, because Winn Dixie had that effect on him. And so the preacher started in preaching again. Well, Winn Dixie sat there listening to it, wiggling his ears this way and that, trying to catch all the words, and everything would have been all right, except that a mouse ran across the floor. The Open Arms had mice. They were there from when it was Pick It Quick, and there were lots of good things to eat in the building. And when the Pick It Quick became the Open Arms Baptist Church, the mice stayed around to eat all the leftover crumbs from the potluck suppers. The preacher kept on saying he was going to have to do something about them, but the preacher never did. Because the truth is, he couldn't stand the thought of hurting anything, even a mouse. Well, Winn Dixie saw that mouse, and he was up and after him. 1 minute, everything was quiet and serious, and the preacher was going on and on and on. And then the next, Winn Dixie looked up and like a fiery bullet shot across the building chasing that mouse. He was barking on his feet, was skating over the polished Pick It Quick floor. People were clapping and hollering and pointing. They really went wild when Winn Dixie actually did catch the mouse. I've never in my life seen a dog catch a mouse, said Miss Nordley, She was sitting next to me. "He's a special dog," I told her. "I imagine so," she said back. Winn Dixie stood up there in front of the whole church, wagging his tail and holding the mouse real careful in his mouth, holding on to him, not to squish him. "I believe that mutt's got some retriever in him," someone said from behind me. "That's a hunting dog." Winn Dixie took the mouse over to the preacher and dropped it at his feet. And when the mouse tried to get away, Winn Dixie put his paw right on the mouse's tail. And then he smiled up at the preacher. And he showed him all his teeth. The preacher looked down at that mouse. And then he looked at Winn Dixie. And then he looked at me. And he rubbed his nose. And he got real quiet in the picket quick. "Let's pray," the preacher finally said, "for this mouse." And everybody started laughing and clapping. The preacher picked up the mouse by the tail and walked and threw it out the front door of the picket quick, and everybody applauded again. And then he came back and we all prayed together. I prayed for my mama. I told God how much he would have enjoyed hearing the story of Winn Dixie catching that mouse. It would have made her laugh. I asked God if maybe I could be the one to tell her the story someday. And then I talked to God about how I was lonely in Naomi, because I didn't know that many kids, only the ones from the church. And there weren't that many kids at the Open Arms, just Dunlap and Steve Dewberry. They were two brothers who weren't twins, but they looked like they were. And Amanda Wilkinson, whose face was always pinched up like she was smelling something real bad. And Sweetie Pie Thomas, who was only 5 years old and still mostly a baby. And none of them wanted to be my friend anyway, because they probably thought I'd tell on them to the preacher for every little thing they did wrong. And then they would get in trouble with God and with their parents. So I told God that I was lonely, even having Winn Dixie. And finally I prayed for the mouse, like the preacher suggested. I prayed that he didn't get hurt when he went flying out the door of the Open Arms Baptist Church of Naomi. I prayed that that mouse had landed on a nice soft patch of grass. That's the end of chapter 5. You guys have a great day. See you later.